All right, so now I'm ready to print. I'm back at my desk. I have my piece of paper that I registered with my marks here. And the other thing that you're gonna need is going to be a hard rubber brayer. These are gonna have the wire loop handles on them, okay? When you touch them, you can tell that the rubber that's on these is not as soft as the brayers that you were using to roll the ink, okay? Now you do wanna do this as quickly as you can, and I'm talking quite a bit here. So as I'm talking, my ink is actively drying, which becomes a problem. All right, so you want to make sure as soon as you're done inking, you go back to your desk, you wait to have a conversation with people at your desk until you actually get this onto the paper, okay? So the first time through, there's not as much risk involved because you're just putting it down on the paper for the first time, but I do need to now print this down onto the page, okay? What I want to do is I pick up the linoleum and I just put my two middle fingers on the edge, and I use this as a hinge so I can rotate it, okay? I see a lot of people, they try and print like this and then they can never turn it because they're trying to hold on to it with all their fingers. So just middle fingers in the middle or pointer fingers in the middle, rotate it like a hinge. And then what you wanna do here is you're gonna line up the corners, and I like to start in like the top left, get my top right, and then I'm just going to gently place it down on the page. Okay. Once you put this on here, if you notice that your corner is off a little bit, do not shift it. Okay. The worst thing that'll happen is there's a slight misregistration, but if you take it and you slide it, you're going to smear the ink and your design is going to be completely lost. Okay. Mistakes are part of printmaking, and really you have to live with some of the imperfections in a print, okay? If we wanted to make these perfect, I would have just had you go into the photocopier and photocopy your marker drawings, okay? So you have to find beauty in the imperfections in printmaking, and I'll talk about some of those in just a second. So I flipped it over, you saw me do this, so now I'm not looking at my linoleum, and what I'm gonna use is this hard rubber brayer to go over the top, and I'm gonna do the same thing that I did when I applied the ink onto the page. I'm gonna go up and down, side to side. I'm gonna roll off the corners, putting as much pressure as I can on there. Okay, and you're not gonna really hurt anything by putting a lot of pressure on there, okay? If you have an area where you know, okay, that it's real important, for example, if I'm doing my last color, which is going to be black, and I only have something up in the upper corner here that's going to be black, I really just need to focus on that area. Okay, there's no reason for me to put all this pressure down on this other side when I don't want anything to print down here, okay? But the first time through, you want to make sure that you really put enough pressure on all the areas so that it successfully prints, okay? Once you think that you've done that, you can take this and you can flip it over and you can do a little peek, okay? And I can see right now that that's not going to be a super successful print, okay? The ink started to dry a little bit on me as I was talking too much, and I probably didn't put quite enough in that corner. Now, if I'm not thrilled with that, which I'm not, what I can do is I can go back, put it down, I can try and apply some more pressure, but there's another option too, and that is getting a wooden spoon. All right, so with the wooden spoon, what you do is you flip it over. So this is the round end. This is the side that you would scoop up the spaghetti sauce or whatever you're making. Put your fingers inside the concave. So you're gonna take the convex, and you're just gonna rub it on those areas that you want it to print, okay? The wooden spoon is nice and smooth. You can put a lot of pressure because it's hard, and you can really focus on specific areas with the spoon. Okay, some people print entirely with wooden spoons without ever using a brayer, and that is an option for you. I had somebody last year that needed to do that because their design was kind of intricate and she was able to focus more on specific areas and she didn't get ink where she didn't want it to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this back here, understanding that this is not going to look exactly how I want it to be. I'm going to carefully peel it back. Okay. Again, I think my biggest problem here was that I allowed the ink to dry too much, but you can see my design, okay? You can see the areas that are white, and one of the good things about this print is that there's not a lot of what I call ink islands, which are little streaks of the color that you printed kind of running through there. If you have a lot of those ink islands, it's probably because you didn't carve quite deep enough into some of those areas. Like you can see there's a little green that's getting on some of those ridges. On mine it didn't print, but if these were a little taller, they might print on yours, okay? Ink islands are going to happen, and I don't downgrade in terms of your craftsmanship if they're appropriate, okay? If you have them all over your print, that becomes an issue, but in some areas it's not a big deal, okay? Now the first time you go through and do this, you don't even have to print on a regular piece of paper, okay, that you registered. If you want to do what's called a proof print, see me to get a piece of just regular printer paper, and then you'll just print directly on there, okay? What the proof print allows you to do is see, all right, I need to go through here, and I need to carve a little bit more in this area because there's some ink that's showing up there that I don't really like, okay? It also allows you just kind of get a practice print, okay? The proof prints you can throw away. You don't need to keep them. It's just kind of to see what it's going to print like. It's just a practice, okay? It's not required, but it is a good idea to do a proof print just so you can see where your mistakes are going to be because you don't get another piece of nice paper, all right? The goal of this is to get 1 excellent print out of 5. I grade only your best one. So there is a lot of leeway for some errors here, but you want to make 5 good prints at the same time, okay? But if you mess up on one, it doesn't mean that you should start over because I don't want you to go through and do the process all over again just to make sure that you have 5 out of 5 excellent prints, okay? As far as I can tell, everybody's going to make some type of mistake in the printing process, okay? So this print, I can leave it at my desk to dry, but the safer thing to do is to take it to the drying rack that's specified to your class, slide it into the drying rack. I'll give everybody a specific shelf that you have to put it on the drying rack, just so you can get it out of the way, nobody knocks it over. If these fall on the floor and they land face down, the ink is going to be sticky for a little bit, so it's going to stick to the floor and get ruined. So it's safest bet is just to go put it in the drying rack and get it out of the way, okay? Now, I have a bunch of green on here at this point, okay? I need to print 5 times. I need to print green 5 times on those 5 pieces of paper that I registered. So what I would do at this point is I would take this back over to the printing station and I could re-ink over the top of this, okay? I would then go and do the same process. I go back to my desk, get a new piece of registered paper, print it down, okay? After I do those 2, the ink is going to start to build up a little bit on the print, and if you have some smaller areas, the ink is going to start to fill in those gaps. After every 2 prints, you need to wash this off in the sink. You simply go to the sink. I would recommend taking a sponge and just rinsing off the front of this. The ink is water soluble, so it comes off pretty easily. Try and avoid getting water on the back because the back is burlap, and if you get too much water on there, these like to curl, and then they become difficult to print when they start to curl, okay? To dry any of the water that does happen to get on the burlap off, a good kind of a secret process is to go to the iron, flip it over upside down, put the iron on the back. You'll see some steam rise up. It's going to make kind of a cool noise, but that does get rid of some of the water that's on there, okay? So if you're doing all 5 in one day, it would be print, re-ink, wash, print, re-ink, wash, and then print your 5th one. Never store at the end of the hour your print with ink on it. You have to always make sure you wash the ink off at the end of the hour, even if you only printed once, okay? The ink will dry on here, and that's going to become a real issue when you go and try and print again, okay? You'll also notice that in these lighter areas where you have carved, okay, I'll be able to get the green ink off of the uncarved areas, but the carved areas are going to stain, okay? All the linoleum here is exposed now. It's very porous, and that color is going to work into there, and it's not going to come out of some of those areas, okay? So don't worry about the staining. As long as it's washed off, these parts are not going to print, okay? If you do have, again, some areas that are showing up, you can go ahead and you can carve those before you print the second time, okay? All right, so now let's talk about the final thing, which is going to be cleaning up everything here. If there are multiple people working at a station, you guys should be working together to get everything cleaned up as quickly and effectively as you possibly can. If you have 3 people at a station, that's a great number. That way one person can clean up the brayer, one person can clean up the palette knives, and then one person can clean up the plexiglass here, okay? When you clean off the brayer, you have to make sure that the entire brayer is cleaned off. That includes these metal sides, these sides here, and all of the ink is off there. It becomes especially important when you're doing black, because black can sometimes be hard to see on the black rubber, okay? The palette knives are pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure that you get all the ink washed off of those. And then the plexiglass, it washes off very easily. The ink just kind of rolls off this nice plastic surface here. You need to make sure that you dry these items before you put them over there. When we were painting, I didn't have you dry everything off, but these do need to be dried, okay? We're gonna call cleanup with about 15 minutes left in class, just to make sure that everything gets cleaned up, put back where it belongs, okay? But again, if you're the only person that is printing pink, go ahead and clean up right away if nobody else is going to use that color, okay? If you have any questions about the printing process, obviously please let me know and I can give you a hand. If your prints are not turning out the way that you would like them to, sometimes if the ink starts to flake, it's because the ink is actually bad and we have to throw it away and get a new can of ink. If we run out of a specific color of ink, let me know, but we do need to use as much of the ink as we possibly can in here, so I'm going to have you scrape until the very, very last drop of ink is out of the containers, okay? Also, before you leave at the end of the hour, you're going to probably get some ink on the table just because your fingers are going to have ink on them, and as you're printing, you're going to transfer some of the ink onto the table. Please make sure, just like when we were painting, that you take a bottle of green spray and some paper towels and you get those areas cleaned off. All right? This is a pretty fun process, so I hope you enjoy yourselves, and again, see me with any questions.